people don't want to be sold to, which
Yeah.
I don't either, but I would like to get some free value. If you tell your clients the hard truths up front, they're going to be so much more likely to trust you and work with you long-term than they ever would if you kind of just bullshitted them the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? We look at ourselves more like partners, less like clients. We have a responsibility to help our clients' overall business. The stakes are too high to be making guesses. So in order to avoid that, we do a couple of different things. Our first day one with all clients is
Tim Zercher, I'm excited to have you on. Tim is the CEO of A-Train Marketing. He's also the host of Tim Talks Podcast, which is a podcast that focuses on the ABA market. Tim, welcome to eCoffee with Experts.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too, man. It seems like you have a lot of energy. And as a leader of an organization, you guys are rounding out 5 years since the acquisition of A-Train Marketing. Since then, from then till now, I'm curious how your focus as a leader has shifted. Tell me a little bit about what you were focused on early on in the acquisition, as opposed to what are you focused on most right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So anyone who's done an acquisition knows that it never goes according to plan, like ever.
Mm-hmm.
There's always things that you don't anticipate coming your way, both good and bad. So I think what I thought I was going to be focusing on when I was going into the acquisition was kind of capitalizing on A-Train's history in the behavioral health space to launch larger in the space. What I ended up doing was fighting a lot of client fires and figuring out a lot of basic logistical things that just weren't organized properly, weren't built out properly in the agency. So first couple of years, honestly, were just chaos and firefighting. Since then, the last 3 years or so have been where my current focus is, which is scaling inside of the behavioral health vertical and building out bigger and stronger partnerships, building out new relationships, and building out kind of more customized services that are built specifically for the space. Which has been going very, very well. The last 3 years have been so much better than the first couple of years. All of these gray hairs that I have were from the first 8 months at A-Train. But since then, it's been much, much better.
Yeah. Yeah. So before you acquired A-Train, you had started an agency which evolved into Z3 Marketing. What were you looking for in terms of an acquisition? What was the purpose of it?
Yeah. So there were two sides. One was that A-Train understood how to build big, complex ADA HIPAA compliant websites. That was something that my team we could not quite figure out all of the sides to it. As you understand, probably websites are big, complicated monster projects. And A-Train had a very, very good process for building out good websites. They also had a reputation and history. A-Train is now 28 years old as an agency. So we have history, we have experience, we have long-standing relationships and partnerships. And me being kind of a startup bootstrap, I figured it all out as I was going. Agency didn't have any of that. So I was purchasing some of that experience and some of that reputation as well. And the last thing that was really the big important piece was their experience specifically in behavioral health, which is the area I knew I wanted to grow into. And that was a major asset to kind of why I purchased.
In the behavioral health space, was that the space that you had started in with your previous agencies, or was it kind of like one client, a portion of your business, and you wanted to lean into it more because you saw opportunity? Or how did you get into that niche?
Yeah, absolutely. So 5.5, 6 years ago, when I was kind of considering the deal, I actually had 0 clients in the behavioral health space. And I didn't even understand the differences, if that makes sense, between behavioral health and general mental health or general health, right? I figured healthcare is healthcare and it's all basically the same. I had several clients in healthcare and I knew I wanted to expand and grow into that vertical. At the time, I was doing marketing for just about anybody. We were kind of the standard local marketing agency, right? So I had literally a coffee shop and a restaurant and 2 consultant groups and 1 agency that did PR stuff, and then a couple of medical groups and a dentist and a chiropractor, and just the kind of the normal mix of everything. And I said, this is cool. This is not what I want. What I really want is to be the absolute best at one specific vertical. And when I started looking into A-Train, I saw that I don't think they understood what they had, that they had a base building out in just behavioral health. At the time, they worked with 3 of the 10 largest behavioral health groups in the state, or actually more than that, probably 5 of the 10 largest in the state. And I said, no, see, that's a vertical that I can really dominate in, which is kind of why I made the decision, which has been why I purchased, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's many verticals that you could go into, but it almost seems like you saw an opportunity of a market that was maybe underserved, or there was less competition, or, there was more margin, or, I guess it's a combination of all of those things. I see the Vistage plaque behind you, and off
Oh
camera,
yeah.
you had mentioned a coach or a mentor, or, someone that you looked up to.
Oh,
A lot of the agencies that I talk to say they're full service and they help any industry. And that can be very difficult to do, and you're talking about specializing. Was there a point where it just like clicked? And what sort of challenges do you have when it comes to just specializing? Because I'm sure you have to turn down offers, turn down referrals.
yeah.
What's your thought process and how you think about drawing the boundaries around who you serve and what you do?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, it is. It was scary. It was very, very scary
Sure.
when I got past the firefighting, and I said, okay, guys, we're going to focus. We are going to start building just behavioral health. This is why we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's the roadmap. My team was terrified of it, probably
Hmm.
more than I was. Um, I am, I think, like a lot of founders, I'm very comfortable with change, much more so than the average person. And so they were scared. They're like, "What? We're not going to work for just Colorado companies? No,
Yeah.
no, no, no. We gotta be bigger. We got to be in a lot more places. We got to be everywhere." So the reason that we specialized and that we focused was because they were badly served. Behavioral health groups are treated like general healthcare groups all the time, but they're very,
Hmm.
very different. The audience is different. They react differently to messages. You have to reach out to them differently. There's a whole different set of language you have to use. It's all different, right?
Yeah.
We decided to specialize in that space because we saw that they were underserved. Once we started really going into that space and actually diving deep and acquiring real partnerships and things, it definitely became easier and easier every single month, right? Like the first couple of months were like banging your head against the wall, lots of cold calling and cold emailing of CEOs that didn't care, didn't want to listen, right? Even though we had a little bit of a track record already,
Hmm.
it was very, very hard to get into new spaces. This year, so it took almost, let's say that right around 23, 25 months to really start gaining speed. We were gaining clients. We were doing okay. We were making
Hmm.
a little bit of money. But this last 8, 9 months, we've really started gaining steam. We've gained multiple significant partnerships that have then led to a lot of other relationships that have led to more reputation and more conversations and more. We're in the room, so to speak, right, for a lot more deals and processes. And so now it's becoming almost natural. Now it's easier to sell to behavioral health and stay focused than it is to sell anywhere else.
Mm.
Like by far
Yeah.
easier. It is hard. It's only hard for a time, if that makes sense. It's only hard for
Yeah.
a year or two, and then it becomes way easier, way, way easier. It's easier to find deals. It's easier to find relationships. People relate better because I understand them. I actually
Yeah.
understand what we're doing and what we're talking about, not just this high level. I have a general idea about business that I can help
Yeah.
them with, right? Just not.
Yeah, it goes from conceptual to practical,
Mhm.
and yeah, instead of being a generalist, obviously you're a specialist now. And I
Yep.
think a lot of the folks that are struggling, they're struggling because they're in that 1 to 2 year period where maybe they're like they haven't quite made that decision. They're like, okay, maybe 51% of my book of business or 60% of my book of business is in this niche, but I haven't made the
Yep.
the decision to actually dive right in. And yeah, I mean, like you're saying, even with the content that you produce, like that there are certain words that you shouldn't use, certain phrases, that are kind of
Absolutely.
maybe used in general society, but inside the industry, you're talking about sensitive subjects a lot of the time, mental health, etc. There's certain phrases that you really shouldn't use, even if someone, I would imagine, and I'm just, kind of on
Yep.
a rant here, but someone who's looking for a mental health provider or a behavioral health provider, maybe they don't have clear definitions or like medical terminology. So they might use things that they hear in society to search. But it's
Exactly.
like, you know,
Exactly. Which I
yeah,
can give you. I mean, I can give you a perfect example. I think this is one that most people. I mean, no one thinks about it unless you're actually in the space.
sure.
If you're in the space, we say substance use providers.
Hmm.
An actual person in the world says addiction treatment. Really,
Yeah, right,
that's really what I care about. I have an
right,
addiction and I need help. That's what they're going to search, right? So
right.
as a specialist agency, I know that when I'm talking to Austin, the CEO of the company, I say
Hmm.
those substance use is our primary target market, right? Like that's where we need to expand, and we can talk about that and like what we're doing and how we're doing and how we differentiate, whatever. And then I can turn around and the content we write on the website is addiction,
Uh-huh.
right? The same phrase, but we use it differently because we know that this like inside We use these terms. The public doesn't. And we
Hmm.
have to be and often we're the ones educating the client on that, right? Of like, your website's cool. And none of these words mean anything to anybody unless they happen to be a actual psychologist, in which case they're probably not coming to you, right? Like maybe they are, but
Right.
it's pretty, very, very small percentage of your population. Yeah. And it's helped to make us better. We do better work for our clients
Sure.
by far now that we're specialized than we used to be able to.
You mentioned partnerships. Tell me what a partnership means to you, and what are the implications of becoming a partner with A Train?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a big shift that we've done the last year and a half, 2 years, and it's been probably the best thing that we've done. And I can't take all the credit for it. We kind of fell into one, and I was like, oh shoot, this is how we should be building. This is how we should be growing. So we have a couple of different types of partnerships. One is just referral partners, people that we actually trust. That we will give business to and they can give business to us. Those partnerships are probably the most important, most impactful, and we're creating more of those every year. But we're also spending a lot more time and energy in maintaining those and focusing on them.
Mm,
I didn't used to do that. I used to be like, well, yeah, I met Austin once for a podcast. He'll think of me, and I would move on with my life. But you won't, because you've never heard from me again for 5 years, right?
sure.
And so we're being a lot more intentional about staying in front of and staying engaged with the partners that work with our type of clients, that do our type of work that we want to be partners with. And then we're also focusing on what I would consider more like corporate partnerships, which are with large behavioral health conferences and
Mm,
associations, or behavioral health like consultancy groups, where we can come in and provide some highly valuable, highly specialized information and data that adds value to their membership, adds value to their conference. I'm speaking at 4 different conferences next year. We're partnered now with 7 of them doing different things. We're getting in front of the right people in a
yeah.
way that adds value, not just in a sales role.
Yeah.
And that's what's really working really well. That's probably, I'd say 99% of all of our marketing and outreach and work now is via partnerships, because it's just
Mm,
people don't want to be sold to, which
yeah.
I don't either, but I would like to get some free value. I would like to get some advice on this thing that's challenging. I would like to hear interesting insights about XYZ, whatever.
Yeah, definitely. Going to those industry conferences. I mean, at DWS, we also attend probably on average like one conference a month, and they're mostly industry conferences, as in like marketing conferences, because
Yeah.
that's what we do. Our clients are agencies. But yeah, like going actually, for you as an agency, that is the service you provide, but the people you provide it to, those are the sort of events that you're going to. Yeah. And like you said, it just makes a huge difference when you even use the word partnership as opposed to a client. It also has implications on your end, although all agencies have a fiduciary responsibility to provide the value that they're being paid for. But on a partnership level, it's almost like you can, like you were kind of mentioning, advising them on a brand level and on a business level, like, hey, like even the linguistics that you're using are differently. I'm
Absolutely.
curious, you mentioned that data that you can provide when it comes to your partnerships. Like what sort of data are you looking at, and what's interesting to you as an agency that you can then turn around and use to help other ABAs or behavioral health, clinics?
Oh, there's so many different pieces that we look at.
Yeah.
I think the pieces that we are focusing on this year, I think there's 2 sides of it. One is the like general business state. What are the big challenges? What's happening? Where's funding? What kind of recruitment is happening? What kind of areas are we trying to expand, et cetera? So I think that's one side, are doing a number of different things in order to kind of gather that data so we can then turn around and give it to our clients.
Hmm.
There's, for instance, a large study that we do every year with one of our large conference partnerships, where we ask a lot of those questions directly to CEOs and then directly to the CMOs, because that's a different perspective, right? In order to gather some of that data and then turn around and provide it so people can see a general sense of like, okay, everybody is really investing in automated note taking for their therapy sessions, for instance, right? This is really something we should get on board with. So like that's one type of valuable data, and that which is not marketing specific, but it impacts the whole
Yeah.
organization. Like you said, we look at ourselves more like partners, less like clients. We have a
Yep.
responsibility to help our clients' overall business. Our
Hmm.
job is this one piece, but if we can provide value in other pieces, then we're going to. And then the second piece is the actual like marketing specific data,
Sure.
that we collect ourselves as we are doing our marketing for our clients. This year, we're probably going to be releasing we've done the work many times and we keep it internal to our clients generally, but we're considering releasing it publicly, a benchmarking report for very specific verticals, because we now have 15, 20, 30 clients in one exact vertical. And we can say average landing page conversion for this vertical is X. And that's different than this vertical, right? ABA
Mm,
is completely different than addiction treatment. And
mm,
both of those are completely different than general counseling therapy, right? And all that's different than TMS therapy, right? And if you're outside the space, behavioral health is behavioral health. It's one big vertical. Once you're inside the space, you're like, oh, none of these things are even close to each other, right? So that kind of much more valuable, specific data is what we're considering releasing more publicly this year. We always give that to our clients internally, and it's one of the things that allows us to serve them so much better than most agencies can, because I can say, not landing pages are convert at 10%. Addiction treatment landing pages should convert at 12.5%. If they're anything
uh-huh.
below that, there's an issue with they're not understanding some piece. Most of our audience is Medicaid, and we don't call out Medicaid as a provided service or something along those lines.
Mm.
That helps us perform a lot better in almost every metric.
Oh yeah. Man, those are fantastic examples. I kind of let's shift into a little bit more of like the marketing tactics and like the how you're going about your marketing strategy. You mentioned that you're more of the strategy guy and you have the business expertise and you understand your partners a lot better. Tell me a little bit more about how you're going about your marketing strategy for your clients. Like what's step 1, what's step 2, how do you see it?
Yeah, yeah. So we're what we call a strategy first agency. So we don't. I think all agencies would like to pretend that they are, but most of the time you kind of throw your money at the wall and see what sticks. Generally,
Mm, mm,
I know because that's what I used to do when I was 2 years in. I was like, oh, let's try Google Ads. Oh, nope, that didn't work. Let's try
yeah.
Facebook ads. Oh, there we go. There it is. Right. We don't do that because the budgets that we play with and the clients that we work with are often very big, and you can't afford $30,000 bet that just doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And also, most of our clients, because they're in behavioral health, have a very short window of success, right? They're going to spend 200 grand on this year, but it has to generate revenue or the
Mm,
whole thing is done. And we'll have to scale back half our locations or something, right? So like the stakes are too high to be
mm,
making guesses. So in order to avoid that, we do a couple of different things. Our first day one with all clients is a in-depth discovery session. It's about 90 minutes plus several follow-on meetings of just learning about them and their audience and their market. And that is it. Once we actually understand that really well, then we'll start doing our research work, which is 2 to 3 weeks generally of us just diving into the actual data, the hard data of how people behave on their website, what kind of search traffic is working in their community, what their competitors are doing, how often have their competitors updated their websites, what optimizations that they've made on their websites, walking through digital ads and the digital ads that are present and what's the bid strategies and what's the average conversion and how much higher or lower is that than the national average.
mm,
Um, we do a lot of those kind of comparative work. And then we come back to our client with what we call our strategic roadmap. Generally, that's roughly what I've outlined in our initial strategy sessions. But often there's significant changes, right? We're like, okay, you hired us for these 5 things. These 4, yes. This 5th one, now that we're in your systems, now that we can be you, is not good. We're going to do item number 6 instead because this is going to be way better. Um,
mm,
Sometimes that's a pivot that's simple. Like we're not going to do meta ads. We're going to do Google ads because the Google ad rating is actually like the bids are actually way lower for your specific city than they are average. So you're going to have
mm.
a big advantage. And sometimes it's much more theoretical. Like, you said your key differentiators are that you train your staff a lot and you do these 3 things. It's like, cool. That doesn't matter. Everyone says
Yeah.
that.
We care about our clients.
Exactly. Yes. So does everybody else. What we're going to talk about is the fact that you're open on weekends. I don't know how you didn't tell us that. That's massive for an ABA treatment group. That kids really need the weekend treatments, or their parents work so they can only get on weekends. That's a key differentiator. That's what we're going to focus on, right?
Hmm.
So it kind of depends on every client, but that's generally kind of our process is a lot of learning, kind of shutting up and listening, and then a lot of research, and then kind of regurgitating that and aligning the client to actually focus on what will actually move the needle. Sometimes clients love that. Sometimes they hate it because it's like, I wanted you to do XYZ. And it's like, yeah, well, XYZ is stupid. So if you want to make money, then you want me to do ABC instead.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's rough. Often though, most of the time clients are like, oh, good. You didn't have me waste money for 9 months. before we figured something out, right? And we save our clients a lot of time and money.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure in the short to midterm, like building trust is extremely important. And then as things get rolling, they obviously trust you,
Absolutely.
even if you make a suggestion that's kind of rubs them the wrong way or they disagree, they're ultimately like, Tim's always right.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Let's
Well,
go
it's
with,
better, right? I mean, if you tell your clients the hard truths up front, they're going to be so much more likely to trust you and work with you long term than they ever would if you kind of just bullshitted them the whole time,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's what I kind of used to do. Is I was like, customer's always right, keep the customer happy. Now it's like, no, no, no. Tell the customer the truth.
Yeah.
We can't do ABC until you fix this issue. And I know you don't want to, but it has to be done first. It builds trust long term.
Yeah, yeah, setting the expectations up front is
Mhm.
super important for retention. I'm curious in a space like this, in an industry like this, yeah, it's pretty niche, I guess,
Yeah.
in comparison to like, real estate or finance or SaaS, it's pretty niche. I guess, what is your competition like as far as a marketing agency in that niche?
There's very few. It's a very competitive space, even
Uh
though
huh.
it's niched down, but it's also not very diverse in terms of the space. There are two other agencies that can do marketing at our level in our
Mm,
space. They are massive. So we are by far the underdog in that regard. They're, I don't know, 600 and 700 employee agencies. They're massive groups. And
wow.
yeah, because they work primarily with big medical groups. At the same time, there's very few that are small enough, flexible enough to work with our client base, which is, 4 to 5 clinics, maybe 150 employees, not 5,000, 6,000 employees, like what there's a larger agencies tend to work with. So in our size category of our niche, there's very, very, very few competitors. Um, the real problem is getting clients to understand the value in hiring a specialist agency like us
Mm,
versus going to some general local dude.
mm,
Which is almost always our competition is not some other specialized agency. It's us or the much cheaper, maybe much faster because they don't really know what they're doing agency that's down the road. Like literally that's almost, I don't know, probably 98% of the time. If there's a competing bid, it's because they're like, well, Jim's down the road. I met this guy at the coffee shop or something like that. And it's like, cool, you can do
yeah,
that. And that might work. You also might get sued because he doesn't understand HIPAA compliance or ADA compliance, and you're not going to be able to get your Medicaid funding. But sure, if that's what you want to do, go ahead. And often those clients end up coming back to us, but it takes time, right?
yeah,
They go down that road for like a year or two and they're like, hey, remember me? We talked a while ago. Yeah, that was a bad idea. I shouldn't have gone with them, but here I am. And cool. We can work with that too.
yeah.
Sometimes they make better clients when they come back to us later.
Yeah, yeah. They're like, I went with my gut, or like I was too stubborn, and then
Yeah.
I'm open now because I was wounded before, and I'm trying to be healed.
Exactly, exactly. Oh, it's
Yeah,
almost always about cost. It's almost always like the
yeah,
local agencies are always cheaper because they don't have industry-wide expertise like we do that we've spent a
hmm
lot of time and a lot of money building, so they can afford to work for a lot cheaper. And it's like, cool, you go ahead, but it's
yeah,
gonna cost you in the long run as long as
yes,
you're willing to pay it. And sometimes it's worth it. Like I'm not saying all the time it's a bad idea. Sometimes it's worth it. I was talking with they had 2 clinicians, really small counseling center. They're like, you guys are too pricey. We're gonna have to go with this other group. Okay, that's cool. Where you're at, that might be enough. That might be fine. You go ahead. In 10 years, when you've grown, you're not going to be able to work with them anymore. It won't fit your needs. But for now,
yeah,
cool.
yeah. My saying is, yes, it's cheap, but what does it cost?
Hmm.
It
Yeah,
is cheap, but there is a cost. You're right. Yeah,
always, always,
yeah.
always.
So, what are you seeing? I mean, I know we're getting short on time, but what are you seeing in terms of AI utilization, either operationally or in service delivery for your clients? You can take that either way.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple of different places that we're using it. We're using AI in a lot of we're using AI where I think AI should be used, which is in the boring stuff that doesn't add a lot of value, but just has to get
hmm
done. Um, for us, that is things like note taking. It is things like proposal writing. I know the big strategy. I can outline the strategy. I don't want to write every single time what's included in website maintenance and why it's included and why you should do it. It's the same every time. Why am I individually writing everything, right? So there's lots of things like that we're using AI for, which I think are more, I guess, standard what kind of everyone's using AI for. I think the couple of areas that we're starting to explore and we're kind of testing right now are in using AI for content writing primarily for websites. Not necessarily just keyword stuffing because that does not work out well. I think we all know by now that black hat bites you eventually. Maybe it doesn't
Yep.
bite you at first, but it'll get you eventually. the same thing will happen with people that are writing. I went up against another agency the other day, and they promised 200 blogs in the first 60 days. And I said, okay, so they're using AI. They don't have an army of writers, right? So they're for sure using a ton of AI. And I was like, cool, that might work for you. And I was honest, that's gonna work for the next couple of months. And then Google update their algorithm and it'll kill you. And it always does, because that's what happened with keyword stuffing, and that's what happened with location stuffing, and that's just always what happens, right? So we've started doing is starting to build out content writing models that are specifically trained on the client. So not just keyword cram ABA therapy for this location, but here's our key differentiators. Here's what makes us different. Here's the bio of our CEO and our local clinicians. And here's information on each individual clinic, right? Like we're starting to do onboarding surveys where every person has to fill out a profile. So they literally have so this IAM model has a self-written bio for the receptionist and why she likes working in ABA at that location. Now write really good content per location about this clinic and how this clinic's totally different than every other of our clinics and how it's totally different than any other competitor in the space. Boom. Right.
Yeah.
That kind of use, in my opinion, is where AI is really powerful, is when you gather enough valuable real world experience and it can just help digest it and put it in a format that fits on a landing page. Restructure a bio that's this big to fit inside the little URL, right? So I think those are the uses that I think they're not spammy. They are effective. They are value add. I think those are going to help long run. And even if they don't, I can go back and have a real person rewrite that if I need to, saying the exact same thing, but now the structure is already done, right? So it'll still add value, even if it starts hurting us in 8 months from now,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. You mentioned there's an intake form when you onboard a client. Obviously, I would imagine you mentioned a 90-minute kind of discovery call, like a deep dive. That's with the CEO and maybe some other C-suite members, or
generally. Yep.
Okay.
Generally, yeah. We try to have whoever makes the budget decisions, whoever makes the marketing decisions, and one or two people that actually talk to clients.
Okay.
That's our ideal mix. Not every client can provide that, but that's their ideal mix for that first onboarding strategy.
And then at that form that you send out that you mentioned, a couple people take it. Is it the same group that you interview, or is it, do you limit that?
It depends on the client. And we're still testing, honestly. So I think in a perfect world, I'd want as much information, as much data as humanly possible. So I want every single person in the company to take it. I don't know that's practical for most companies, even if it's 5 minutes times 200 employees with a ton of time invested.
Yeah.
Plus the 18 hours worth of emails of, what is this? Why do I do this? Where is it going? Yeah. Because it doesn't matter how well you explain anything. There's still questions. But I think long term, I think that is going to be one of our biggest strategies is really good, really efficient content gathering.
Yeah.
To then turn into content creation. I think in my opinion, that's where a lot of agencies are missing the boat, is they're just making stuff up, and that's cool, but it's not real. And you're going to get called on your BS eventually, right?
Yeah.
If it's not real, if it's real and genuine, it's going to add value. And if it's not, it's not going to. We don't do, for instance, we don't do social content creation anymore for our clients almost at all. We do like the holiday posts and stuff because it's not real. I can make up stuff to talk about, but it's not really going to work. I'd much rather give you a full training for your assistant or the local office manager to just post something real about what's happening in the clinic. That's going to matter so much more than some generic happy Halloween. Just matter more, right? It's going to have a higher impact because it's real, and people are getting better and better at sensing what's real. AI is getting better and better at faking what's real, but people are getting better and better at sensing if this feels
Yeah, it's so interesting. The human generated content is still what drives, unique impressions. That's still what the Google crawl is looking for, and man, that's super smart. Like getting different perspectives from inside the business, not just CEO, not just CMO, but actually what's happening on the patient level, man, super smart.
Thank you,
Tim. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience. It's really interesting and cool to see, an entrepreneur who then takes it to the next level and acquires an agency 3 times the size of his current agency. So congrats on all your success. I know you're rounding out 5 years of the acquisition. Where can we find more about you and A Train online?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Anyone can feel free to find me on my LinkedIn. That's probably my biggest. That's the place I'm most active. And that's just my name, Timothy Zercher, spelled weird, so Zercher. If you find that, you'll find me. I think there's one other guy that has a similar name, but he's not in marketing, so you won't be confused. But yeah, you can always find me there, or you can find A Train at atrainmarketing.com. He's always looking for new partnerships.
Awesome. I love that. Keep it rolling, man. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.